The artificial atmosphere of Uxus Prime carried the mingled scents of 1,000 worlds. Spiced steam from Rigelian food vendors, the ozone tang of plasma welders, and something that smelled suspiciously like week-old socks from the Centauri delegation. Captain Zane Harlow descended the boarding ramp of his cargo shuttle, the Wandering Star, and immediately regretted not upgrading his ship's air filtration system. Uxus Prime was the galaxy's largest floating market, a sprawling commercial station that drifted between star systems, like some cosmic merchant. Here, beings from hundreds of species gathered to trade everything from legitimately sourced antimatter to questionably obtained archaeological artifacts. It was the kind of place where you could buy a hyperspace drive in one stall and get your fortune told by a 6-armed psychic in the next. Zane adjusted his worn flight jacket and checked his personal communicator. The cargo manifest showed he was picking up agricultural supplies, code for whatever contraband his employer had arranged. After 15 years running freight between the outer colonies, Zane had learned not to ask too many questions about his cargo. Credits were credits, and the Galactic Trade Consortium's taxes didn't pay themselves. The marketplace buzzed with activity as various species conducted business in dozens of languages. A group of tall, insectoid Mantrians clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter while haggling over crystal processors. Near the fountain, a delegation of blue-skinned Aquarians had set up a small pond where they conducted meetings half-submerged. The sight never failed to amaze newcomers, but Zane had seen it all before. What he hadn't seen before was the woman approaching him. She moved with the fluid grace of royalty, her pale lavender skin marking her as one of the Ves, a species known throughout the galaxy for their diplomatic prowess. Her elaborate ceremonial robes flowed around her like liquid starlight, and the intricate jewelry adorning her head indicated high rank. Most notably, she was flanked by 6 armed guards in ceremonial armor, which definitely fell outside the normal parameters of Zane's typical cargo pickups. Captain Harlow. Her voice carried the musical accent typical of the Ves homeworld. I am Princess Auralia Ves. I believe you have business with my people. Zane's mind raced. The cargo manifest hadn't mentioned anything about royalty. He'd been expecting to meet some low-level smuggler at a dive bar, not a princess in the middle of the marketplace. Still, business was business. Pleasure to meet you, Your Highness, Zane said, extending his hand in the universal human greeting. Though I have to admit, this isn't exactly the pickup location I was expecting. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every guard's weapon was suddenly pointed at him, and Princess Auralia's eyes widened in what could only be described as horror. "Stop!" she commanded, raising her hand. The guards froze, but their weapons remained aimed at Zane, who found himself suddenly very aware of how exposed he was in the open marketplace. "Human, Princess Auralia," said, her voice carrying a mixture of patience and exasperation that reminded Zane uncomfortably of his second-grade teacher. "You're supposed to greet my melons, not my hand. It's custom." Zane blinked. "I'm sorry, you're what now?" The princess gestured toward her chest, where the ceremonial robes did indeed emphasize certain anatomical features that could generously be described as melon-like. The traditional Ves greeting involves acknowledging the life-giving aspects of femininity. To offer a hand clasp is to suggest that I am male, which is deeply insulting. The guards' weapons hadn't moved. A crowd was beginning to gather, and Zane could hear the distinctive sound of news feeds going live. This was exactly the kind of intergalactic incident that could end his career, assuming he lived through it. I didn't know," Zane stammered. "I meant no offense. Perhaps you could explain the proper greeting." Princess Auralia studied him for a long moment, then nodded to her guards. The weapons lowered, but only slightly. Normally, a breach of protocol like this would result in immediate imprisonment and a diplomatic incident that could take years to resolve. However, I sense that your ignorance was genuine rather than malicious. She paused, seeming to consider her options. You will come with me to our embassy quarters. There, you will learn the proper customs if you wish to complete your business with our people. Refuse and your ship will be impounded indefinitely." Zane glanced back at the wandering star. He'd worked too hard and too long to lose his ship over a cultural misunderstanding. "Lead the way, Your Highness." The Vess embassy quarters occupied an entire section of Euxis Prime's diplomatic ring. The architecture was unlike anything in human space, flowing organic curves that seemed to grow from the station's hull rather than being built upon it. Bioluminescent veins pulsed gently through the walls, providing a soft, ever-changing light that somehow made Zane feel both relaxed and slightly uncomfortable. Princess Auralia led him through a series of increasingly elaborate chambers until they reached what appeared to be a formal meeting room. The space was dominated by a series of curved benches, arranged in concentric circles, with a raised platform at the center. The walls were covered in intricate murals depicting Vess history, including what appeared to be countless variations of the Melon greeting ceremony. "Sit," Princess Auralia commanded, gesturing to one of the benches. "Ceremony Master Lorien will explain our customs to you." Ceremony Master Lorien turned out to be an elderly Vess male, his skin a deeper shade of lavender than the princess's, with intricate tattoos covering his arms and face. He moved with the deliberate precision of someone who had spent decades perfecting ritualistic movements. "Ah, the human who insulted our princess," Lorien said, his voice carrying no malice, only professional interest. "This should be educational." "I really didn't mean to insult anyone," Zane protested. "Where I come from, a handshake is a sign of respect." "And where you come from, I'm sure it is," Lorien replied. "But you are not in human space anymore. Among the Vess, the female form represents the source of all life, the flowing force that connects us to the universe. To greet a woman properly, one must acknowledge this power." He gestured to the murals on the walls. "Observe. The proper greeting involves a specific gesture, a particular stance, and most importantly, the correct intention. It is not about physical attraction as many outsiders misunderstand. It is about recognizing the sacred feminine principle." Zane studied the murals, trying to parse the meaning from the artistic stylization. The greeting appeared to involve holding one's hands in a specific position while bowing slightly, all while looking at the woman's chest area. "This is going to sound incredibly stupid," Zane said. "But how do I look respectfully at someone's melons without looking like a pervert?" Lorien actually smiled at this. "A fair question. The key is intention and duration. You look, you acknowledge, you bow. The entire gesture takes perhaps 3 seconds. Any longer, and it becomes inappropriate. Any shorter, and it appears dismissive." "Right," Zane said slowly. "And the hand position?" "Like this," Lorien demonstrated, placing his hands together in front of his chest, fingers pointed upward. "This represents the valley between mountains, the fertile ground from which life springs. You hold this position as you acknowledge and bow." Zane attempted to mimic the gesture. His hands felt awkward, and he was fairly certain he looked ridiculous. No, Lorien tutted. "Your stance is too rigid. The Vess believe in the harmony of movement. Flow like water, not stand like a statue." For the next hour, Lorien put Zane through increasingly complex variations of the greeting. There was the formal royal greeting for princesses and queens, the diplomatic greeting for female ambassadors, the trade greeting for female merchants, and apparently a different greeting for each day of the Vess week. "This is insane," Zane muttered, after his 7th failed attempt at the 3rd moon-rising variation used for greeting priestesses. "How does anyone remember all this?" "You learn it from childhood," Princess Auralia said, entering the room. She had changed from her ceremonial robes into something slightly less elaborate, but still distinctly royal. "Just as you learned your human customs from childhood." "Fair point," Zane admitted. "Though I have to ask, what exactly was this business you wanted to discuss? My cargo manifest just said agricultural supplies." Princess Auralia and Lorien exchanged glances. "Perhaps," the princess said carefully, "we should discuss this in private." Lorien bowed to the princess, using a male-to-female greeting that was somehow different from what he'd been teaching Zane, and left the room. Princess Auralia waited until the door sealed before speaking. Captain Harlow, what do you know about the political situation in the Vest Confederacy? Honestly, not much. I know you're allied with the Galactic Trade Consortium. You export those bioluminescent art pieces everyone loves, and your diplomatic corps has a reputation for being able to negotiate peace between anyone. All true, she nodded. What you may not know is that our government is currently divided. There are those who believe we should maintain our traditional ways, and those who believe we must modernize to survive in the changing galaxy. Zane was beginning to smell the distinct odor of politics, which in his experience was far more dangerous than any contraband cargo. And which side are you on? I believe in preserving our culture while adapting to reality, she said. The traditionalists, however, see any change as betrayal. They view my willingness to work with off-worlders as weakness. Let me guess, Zane said. They heard about my greeting faux pas and are going to use it against you. Princess Auralia smiled ruefully. You understand politics better than you let on, Captain. Yes, they will claim that I am so corrupted by outside influence that I allow aliens to insult our most sacred traditions. They may even use this as grounds to remove me from the succession. So, what's the cargo? What agricultural supplies could possibly be worth all this political risk? Seeds, she said simply. Seeds from a dozen different worlds capable of growing in Vest soil. Our home planet is dying, Captain. Climate change, overfarming, industrial pollution. The same problems that plagued Earth before humans spread to the stars. We need these seeds to ensure our people's survival. And the traditionalists oppose this because they believe our planet is sacred, that to change it is to betray our ancestors. They would rather see our people starve than admit we need help from outsiders. Zane leaned back on the bench, processing this information. He'd been expecting to ferry some black market weapons, or maybe stolen artwork. Seeds to save a dying world hadn't been on his list of possibilities. So what do you need from me? He asked finally. Complete the delivery, obviously. But more than that, you need to perform the melon greeting correctly at tomorrow's trade ceremony. If you can show proper respect for our customs, it will demonstrate that outsiders can learn and adapt. It will undermine the traditionalist argument that cooperation with other species leads inevitably to cultural destruction. And if I screw it up again, then you'll probably be the catalyst for a civil war, she said, matter-of-factly. No pressure then. Princess Auralia stood to leave, then paused at the door. Captain Harlow, your willingness to learn even after making such a significant error, it means more than you might think. Most outsiders would have left rather than submit to our customs. Yeah, well, Zane replied, my ship's been impounded, so leaving's not really an option. Your ship was released an hour ago, she said with a slight smile. You're choosing to stay. After she left, Zane sat alone in the ceremonial chamber, staring at the murals depicting countless variations of the melon greeting. He tried to imagine himself performing the ceremony in front of an audience, with the fate of an entire world potentially hanging in the balance. What the hell have I gotten myself into? He muttered to the empty room. The next morning brought unwelcome news. Zane woke in the guest quarters the Vests had provided to find Ceremony Master Lorien pacing anxiously in the main chamber. We have a problem, Lorien announced without preamble. The Conservative Council has accelerated the timeline. The trade ceremony is no longer tomorrow. It's today, in 4 hours. Zane felt his stomach drop. 4 hours. That's not enough time. I barely managed the basic greeting yesterday, and that was with constant coaching. There's more, Lorien continued grimly. They've declared this a grand ceremony, which means you'll need to perform the full seasonal greeting sequence. That's 12 different gestures each, corresponding to a different aspect of the Vest calendar. 12. Zane's voice cracked slightly. Lorien, there's no way I can learn 12 different greetings in 4 hours. You must, Princess Aralia said, entering the chamber. She looked as though she hadn't slept. The Conservative Council is using every legal mechanism at their disposal to force this situation. They want you to fail Zane. They're counting on it. Why can't we postpone claim I'm sick or something? Because, Princess Aralia explained, the seeds you're carrying have a limited viability. Wait too long and they'll be useless. The Council knows this. They're betting that you'll either run, proving that outsiders can't be trusted to honor our ways, or you'll fail spectacularly, giving them ammunition to use against me. Zane sat down heavily on one of the curved benches. So, I'm trapped between a rock and a hard place, and the fate of your civilization depends on whether I can properly greet your melons without looking like an idiot. Essentially, yes. Great. Just great. Zane stood up, decision made. Well, if I'm going to fail, I might as well fail spectacularly. Let's get started. What followed were the most intense 4 hours of Zane's life. Lorien proved to be a merciless but effective instructor, drilling Zane on each of the 12 greetings until muscle memory began to take over. Spring rain, greeting hands flowing like water. Summer sun, greeting arms raised in celebration. Autumn harvest, greeting hands cupped as if holding grain. Winter rest, greeting hands folded in contemplation, and 8 others that blended together in an increasingly complex dance of cultural respect. Remember, Lorien emphasized as they practiced, each greeting must be performed with genuine intention. The Ves can sense insincerity. They've evolved to read micro-expressions and body language with incredible accuracy. No pressure, Zane muttered, attempting the 6th moon rising greeting for the 10th time. Actually, Princess Aralia interjected, there's something else you should know. The Conservative Council has arranged for the ceremony to be broadcast live across the Ves homeworld and 3 colony systems. Billions will be watching. Zane's hands froze mid-gesture. Billions. I thought you should know. Right, because that makes it better. Zane took a deep breath and resumed practicing. Okay, from the top. Spring rain, summer sun, autumn harvest. As the time for the ceremony approached, Zane found himself surprisingly calm. There was something almost meditative about the repetitive practice the focus required to get each gesture exactly right. He was beginning to understand why the Ves placed such importance on ceremony. It demanded a kind of mindfulness that was increasingly rare in the fast-paced galactic civilization. The ceremony was to be held in the Grand Assembly Hall, the largest space in the Ves embassy. When Zane entered, he was amazed to find it filled with hundreds of beings from dozens of species. Ves dignitaries occupied the front rows, their elaborate robes and jewelry creating a sea of flowing color. Behind them sat representatives from various galactic governments, trade organizations, and news services. At the center of the hall stood a raised platform with an ornate chair, more of a throne really, where Princess Aralia would sit during the ceremony. 12 other seats were arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a female Ves representative from different sectors of their society. Citizens of the galaxy, announced a Ves herald, his voice amplified by hidden speakers. We gather today to witness the first interspecies, full seasonal greeting in over a century. Captain Zane Harlow of the merchant vessel, Wandering Star, will demonstrate the depth of respect that can exist between our peoples. Zane, dressed in the formal robes that Lorien had provided, walked to the center of the platform. The weight of those billions of watching eyes pressed down on him like a physical force. He caught Princess Aralia's eye and saw something there. Not just hope, but trust. She believed he could do this. The ceremony began with spring rain. Zane positioned himself in front of the first representative, an elderly Ves woman who served as an agricultural minister. He formed the hand position, flowing like water, looked respectfully at her chest for exactly the prescribed duration, and bowed. The woman smiled and nodded approvingly. Summer sun went equally well, as did autumn harvest. By the 4th greeting, Zane felt himself relaxing into the rhythm of the ceremony. Each gesture flowed naturally into the next, and he could sense the approval of the audience. Then things went wrong. As Zane approached the seventh representative, a young priestess who couldn't have been more than 20 in human years, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the hall in red, and the air filled with the sound of running feet and shouted orders. "Security alert," came an announcement over the station's public address system. "All civilians remain in place. Security personnel to emergency positions." The Conservative Council had made their move. Through the hall's transparent walls, Zane could see armed figures in vests, military uniforms, storming through the embassy corridors. They moved with purpose and precision, clearly following a predetermined plan. "The council has staged a coup," Princess Auralia said, rising from her throne. "They're using the ceremony as cover. While all attention was focused here, they've seized control of our ship bays and communication centers." Panic began to spread through the audience. Several ambassadors were already moving toward the exits, only to find them blocked by council forces. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "Your Highness," called one of the Conservative Council leaders, a middle-aged vest male, who had just entered the hall with a squad of soldiers, "by the authority vested in me by the true guardians of Vest tradition, I place you under arrest for treason against our sacred customs." "On what grounds?" Princess Auralia demanded. "On the grounds that you have allowed our most holy ceremonies to be corrupted by alien influence," he replied, gesturing toward Zane. "This human has already insulted our traditions once. His presence here performing our sacred rituals is an abomination." Zane looked around the hall, his mind racing. The coup leaders were using the ceremony itself as evidence of Princess Auralia's unfitness to rule. The very act of trying to bridge cultural differences was being painted as cultural betrayal. Then inspiration struck. "Wait!" Zane called out, stepping forward. "I'm not finished." The council leader turned to him with obvious irritation. "Human, you are no longer needed. Return to your ship and leave Vest space immediately." "I can't do that," Zane replied, moving to stand beside Princess Auralia. "I haven't completed the full seasonal greeting. To leave now would be the true violation of your customs." "You dare lecture us about our own traditions?" "I don't dare anything," Zane said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "I'm just a cargo pilot who wants to finish what he started. The ceremony requires 12 greetings. I've only performed 6. A murmur ran through the crowd. Zane was counting on his growing understanding of Vest psychology, their obsession with proper protocol, and completed ceremonies. To interrupt a sacred ritual midway through would be considered deeply unlucky, if not outright blasphemous. "The ceremony has been terminated due to emergency circumstances," the council leader declared. "Has it?" Zane asked. "Because according to everything I've learned about Vest tradition, once a sacred seasonal greeting begins, it must be completed, or it brings misfortune to all participants. Are you really willing to curse everyone in this hall to save a few minutes?" The council leader's face darkened, but Zane could see uncertainty in his eyes. Around the hall, other Vests were nodding and murmuring agreement. Even some of the councilman's own soldiers looked uncomfortable. "Very well," the leader said finally. "Complete your mockery of our traditions. It will only prove our point more clearly." Zane turned back to the seventh representative, the young priestess. She looked terrified, caught between the coup attempt and an incomplete ceremony. He formed the seventh moon setting position, looked respectfully, and bowed. Despite everything happening around them, she managed a small smile of encouragement. As he moved to the eighth representative, Zane realized that the ceremony was serving a dual purpose. Each greeting was taking time the council hadn't planned for. Each moment of delay was another opportunity for loyal forces to respond to the coup. The eighth greeting, ninth, 10th, each performed with increasing confidence. The audience, even under the guns of the coup forces, watched with growing fascination. Here was an outsider, a human who until yesterday had never heard of the Melon greeting, performing their most sacred ceremony with genuine respect and growing skill. The 11th greeting was to Princess Auralia herself. As Zane approached her throne, He caught her eye and saw something new there, not just trust, but pride. He performed the royal seasonal greeting with every bit of precision Lorien had drilled into him, and the princess rose to acknowledge his honor to their traditions. But the 12th representative was gone. The Conservative Council had arrested the 12th representative, the head of the Vest Scientists Guild, as part of their coup. The ceremony couldn't be completed. Or could it? Citizens of the galaxy. Princess Auralia said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. The 12th position in our ceremony represents the future, the unknown possibilities that await our people. In the absence of our guild representative, I call upon someone else to fill this role. She gestured, and to Zane's amazement, Dr. Haxor, the Trade Consortium ambassador, stepped forward. She was a tall, elegant Vest female who had been in the audience. As a representative of the broader galactic community of the future, our people might share with others. Ambassador Haxor will receive the final greeting. The council leader started to object, but Princess Auralia raised her hand. Unless you wish to declare that the Vests have no future in the galactic community. It was a masterstroke. To object would be to admit that the conservatives wanted to isolate the Vests completely from all outside contact. Even for them, that was too extreme a position to take publicly. Zane approached Ambassador Haxor for the final greeting. As he formed the hand position for the eternal future, greeting, every sound in the hall seemed to fade away. This was it, the culmination of everything he'd learned, everything he'd come to understand about the Vests and their culture. He looked acknowledged and bowed with perfect form. The hall erupted in applause. But the celebration was short-lived. The council leader, his face purple with rage, raised his weapon toward Princess Auralia. Enough, this perversion of our sacred ways ends now. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, casting everything in eerie red shadows. In the confusion, someone screamed, and the sound of weapons fire filled the air. Zane threw himself toward Princess Auralia, knocking her down behind the throne, just as energy blasts seared the air where she'd been standing. "The ceremonial chamber," she called out over the noise. "There's a secure passage." Together, they crawled across the platform toward a section of wall that looked identical to every other section. Princess Auralia pressed her hand against what appeared to be solid stone, and a panel slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel. "What about the others?" Zane asked as they squeezed into the passage. "Ambassador Haxor knows the embassy well. She'll lead whoever she can to safety." The passage was barely wide enough for one person, forcing them to move in single file. The important thing now is to prevent the council from claiming complete victory. They emerged in what appeared to be a storage room, filled with the organic-looking containers the Vests used for their biotechnology. Princess Auralia moved to a wall panel and began pressing symbols in a complex sequence. "I'm activating the embassy's defense protocols," she explained. "It won't hold them for long, but it should give loyal forces time to respond." "Princess Auralia," Zane said, "I need to ask you something. That ceremony, the greeting, it wasn't just about cultural respect, was it?" She paused in her work and turned to him. "What do you mean? You could have chosen anyone to perform that ceremony. A trained diplomat, someone who already knew your customs. Why did you choose me?" The princess was quiet for a moment. "Because you represented something the Conservative Council couldn't understand. The possibility that outsiders could learn, adapt, and respect our ways without losing their own identity. You proved that cooperation doesn't mean cultural destruction. And now, we need to get off this station before the Council's forces find us." She finished entering the code sequence, and several of the biocontainers opened, revealing what looked like environmental suits designed for Vest physiology. "The defense protocols will lock down the embassy and broadcast a record of today's events to every Vest colony and allied world. The Council may control the station temporarily, but they can't control the truth." Zane examined one of the suits. It was clearly designed for the Vest anatomy, but there were adjustment mechanisms that might allow it to fit a human. "Where exactly are we going?" "Emergency escape pods. Every embassy has them. She was already donning her suit. From there, we reach your ship and get off Euxis Prime, before the Council decides that dead witnesses are preferable to living ones. As they made their way through the embassy's service corridors, Zane couldn't help but reflect on how much his understanding of the Vess had changed in just 2 days. What had seemed like bizarre, perverted customs now revealed themselves as deep-rooted traditions with real cultural and spiritual significance. They reached the escape pod bay without incident, though the sound of weapons fire and shouting echoed through the station's corridors. The political situation was clearly deteriorating rapidly. There, Princess Auralia pointed to a sleek oval craft nestled in one of the launch bays. "That pod will take us to the civilian docking ring where your ship is berthed." As they strapped themselves in, Zane asked, "What happens now? Even if we escape, won't the Council just claim victory? They control the embassy. They have those seeds." "Actually," Princess Auralia said with a slight smile as she initiated the launch sequence, "they don't have the seeds." "What?" "The containers in your cargo hold are empty. The real seeds were transferred to Ambassador Haxor's ship this morning before the ceremony. I suspected the Council might try something." The escape pod shot out of the embassy and into the controlled chaos of station traffic. In the distance, Zane could see other ships launching. Apparently word of the coup attempt was spreading, and various ambassadors were making hasty exits. So this whole thing was a distraction? Not entirely. The ceremony was real, and its success was genuinely important. But yes, keeping the Council focused on you and the seeds gave us the opportunity to ensure the real cargo reached its destination safely. They docked with the Wandering Star without incident. As they transferred to Zane's ship, Princess Auralia paused at the airlock. "Captain Harlow, Zane, I owe you a debt that can't be repaid. You risked your life for people you barely knew to respect customs that must have seemed absurd to you." "Actually," Zane replied, as he powered up the ship's systems, "they stopped seeming absurd once I understood what they meant. Every culture has ways of expressing what matters to them. You just have to be willing to listen." As the Wandering Star departed Euxis Prime, Zane reflected on the events of the past 2 days. He'd come to pick up a simple cargo run and ended up involved in preventing a coup, performing sacred alien rituals, and learning more about cultural respect than any university course could have taught him. 3 weeks later, Zane received a message from Princess Auralia. The Conservative Council's coup had failed within hours of his escape. The broadcast of the ceremony, particularly the sight of a human performing the full seasonal greeting with obvious respect and sincerity, had swayed public opinion against the Council. The seeds had been successfully planted on the Vess homeworld, and early growth indicators were extremely positive. But the message that really caught his attention was the formal appointment as an honorary cultural liaison to the Vess Confederacy, along with an invitation to return for the Festival of Growing Seeds, and to learn the even more complex greeting ceremonies required for that celebration. Zane looked out at the stars ahead of his ship and smiled. He'd spent 15 years hauling cargo between the stars, meeting hundreds of species and learning bits and pieces of dozens of cultures. But he'd never really understood the deeper meaning behind any of it. Perhaps it was time to change that. After all, there were probably a lot more customs out there that were waiting to be properly understood. And if there was one thing Zane Harlow had learned, it was that sometimes the most important cargo you could carry was respect for the people you meet along the way, even if expressing that respect involved greeting their melons. The Wandering Star turned toward Vess space, carrying a cargo hold full of gifts from grateful allies, and a captain who had discovered that the galaxy was far more complex, beautiful, and meaningful than he'd ever imagined. And as he set course for his next adventure, Zane practiced the hand positions for the festival greeting, determined to get them right the first time. After all, he had a reputation to maintain as the first human to master the traditional Vess melon greeting. And in a galaxy where cultural understanding could mean the difference between peace and war, that was a reputation worth having.